Okay, good morning. Welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Iyun Benzion. Today's daf is daf Samach Dal, number 64 in the Nedarim, a new parak, the ninth parak. Mishnah talks about Nola. Machlokas relates in the comment. Can you matter another based on Nola? Nola, the Pashup shot, the simple explanation of Nola means when I took the nether, something was true. Afterwards, the circumstances changed. If I would have known the circumstances would change, I never would have taken the nether. Now, normally, when a Pesach, right, when you're matter another Pesach, right? It's like a mekach tos or neder betos, right? I didn't have knowledge. There was knowledge lacking when I took the neder, and that knowledge was available, was present at the time I took the neder, but I didn't know about it. Personally, I didn't know about it. If I would have known about it, I never would take the neder. But here, right, if I take a neder, like the Mishnah says, I'm not going to go into a certain house, and then it becomes a shul, or it becomes a parliament, and then realize it's a parliament, it's an important place. I want to become an MK, I want to be part of the Knesset here in Israel. You didn't know that, so it was a house. It was a residential house when I took the nether, not a parliament, not a shul. So I didn't know. So that's Nola. Relazar says you can use Nola. So you don't. You can't use Nola. I'm not going to explain exactly my Relazar in the comment, but I want to explain where the proof, the Gemara on Samach Dal and Beis says what's the source for Relazar. Relazar says the source is it's by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu made a neder, a shvua, to Yisro, his father-in-law. I'm not going back to Mitzrayim. Now, it's clear from the Psukim, the reason he wasn't going back to Mitzrayim is because he killed a Mitzri, and Dasan and Aviram saw him. And they were influential people, and they were going to rat on him, and they already did rat on him to the government, to Paro, and Paro was going to kill him, so he's not going back to Mitzrayim. So Hashem says to him, they died. Mesu Hanashim Avakshim, people that were tattletaling on you, Dasan and Aviram, have died. So they've died. So therefore, you can go back to Mitzrayim because your shvua to Yisrael is null and void. How could your shvua be null and void? It's Nola, right? Elamai. You see that you can post but Nola. You can use Nola because at the time you took another, they were alive. They died afterwards, right? I knew they were alive if I knew they were dead, but I didn't know they were going to die, right? So the Gemara says, what are the Rabbanan going to say to that? It seems to be a good proof for Belezra, Poskim Benola. So the Gemara answers, no, Belezra says they didn't actually die. I mean, it's clear from Korach, they were Parsh Korach, they were still alive, way after Yetziat Mitzrayim. All it means is that they yardu minichseyim, meaning they became poor. When you're poor, you can't influence the government anymore. You can't tattle on the government. No one's going to speak to you. You're not going to be able to get into the inner chambers with Vladimir Putin or Joe Biden or, or Donald Trump if he was president. You're not going to be able to talk to him. Or Xi Jinping from China. You're not able to talk to them if you're a poor person. You're not going to talk to you. If you're an oligarch, a Russian oligarch, you'll get Putin's ear. If not, you're not going to get Putin's ear. So the idea is that they didn't actually die. They just became poor. So the Rishonim asked the question, why is that better, right? Because they became poor. When I took the Neder, they were rich. They were influential. They could influence the government. They could have me killed. I didn't know they'd become poor. Most people who are rich stay rich. You know, the rich become richer. You know, the poor become poorer. That's the way it works in society. The hardest is the first million. After you're the first million, you just keep on going up to become a billionaire. You know. So, what's going on over here? So some Farshim say, differences, is that poverty, someone who's wealthy, happens pretty frequently. Someone who's wealthy loses their money, loses their fortune, their business goes sour. But on that, you could ask the question, people die. It's frequently, a lot of people die in this world. Just as often as people lose their money, people die early. So you say percentages, more people lose their money, lose their fortune, and die. I mean, I don't know if you want to compare percentages, but it's not that frequent, but it is kind of frequent. So either way, you're not really helping yourself by answering that question. I want to answer like this, that from the Lashon, Yardu Minichsei. What does it mean, Yardu Minichsei? It's a weird way of saying become, He'anu, they became poor. They became Nasa Aniyim. Why does it say Yardu Minichsei? Chazal uses Lashon. They lowered themselves from their Nechasim. And the answer is that Yardu Minichsei means that when you're a rich person, right, you have to act like a rich person. You got to dress the part. You got to wear fancy clothes. You got to drive a fancy car. You got to hang around with the right people, the right network. You got to be influential in the government. You know, there's a lot of things. You have to be a philanthropist. You have to be an exalted individual. Someone who's a rich person. If you're really a rich person, you got, right? Sometimes you find these yeshivish guys, they become, big singing stars. They become sensations. You got to dress the part. You got to start wearing fancier clothes. You got to drive a nice car. You only talk to certain people. You get, not in the Jewish world, but in the non-Jewish world, you got to get bodyguards. You got to get, you got to live it up. Not living it up, but you got to, you know, there's a certain way that a wealthy person carries himself that a regular person doesn't carry himself. So the idea is that Dasan and Aviram, even though they were very wealthy, at the time they were very wealthy, they were not demonstrating their wealth. Meaning, think of it like a yeshivish guy who strikes it big in the real estate market or the stock market, and they live in poverty. You hear this so many times. A lot of times you hear this. Now, not only people lose their money, but we'll talk about that in a second. They wear the Casio W90 watch. The cheapest one for $10 watch. They drive a jalopy. They drive the 10-year-old Toyota Camry. Their house. Sometimes they have a small apartment here in Israel, or their house they're always giving out to poor people, or they build a small house, or they don't want to portray. They want to have hanava. Hashem gave us His blessing. We give all the money away to yeshivas and mostos, but they're not living like a rich person. When you're not living like a rich person, not always. This has caused you to lose your fortune, but a lot of times, very frequently, it causes you to lose your fortune because Hashem expects you to act your part. If you're given money, you got to act like a rich person. You can't go against the nature of this world. And therefore, Dasan Avira, maybe they were influential in government because they had governments here with all their money. But apparently, they didn't act like, and also, it's in terms of the way you carry yourself in public discourse, right? The comments you make in public. When you become a big star or a big influential person, right? You have to be much more cautious with your words than when you're a nobody. When you're nobody, people will just discard your words. When you're very cautious, when you're a big person, gadol, or you're a very influential politician, or a basketball star, you have to be very careful with your words because people will try to take your words out of context. And if you say something, even with the slightest prejudice against a certain group of people, you'll be canceled, especially nowadays world. So you're going to be canceled. So you have to be careful with your words, and you have to be more elegant with your words. And someone who doesn't do that, someone like the Torah describes, Nitzim and Nitzarim, these people were rebellious people, Dasan V'Aviram. They were quarrelsome people. They got into fights with people. They weren't acting out their wealth. They were not carrying themselves with prestige. And therefore, the way of losing their money, right? One of the ways of losing your money is yardu minichsein. You have property. You have a lot of property. Hashem gives you a lot of property, a lot of assets. You lower yourself from the assets when you don't act the way of a wealthy person. You don't carry yourself with the same prestige. You're not careful with your words. They were nitzim and nitzavim. These people were rebellious, quarrelsome people. They were not acting like rich people. And therefore, that was already present at the time Moshe Rabbeinu left Mitzrayim. They happened to be influential then. But very often, right, more often than not, you're going to lose your possessions if you don't act out the part of a rich person. And therefore, that was already present. That's what I'm saying. It was already present, the source of them becoming poor at the time that he left Mitzrayim. So it's not nulled over there, because the reason that they become poor already existed based on their persona and the way they carry themselves. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.